All right, we are in session. Welcome to hashtag NYC Men Equiteach. This is the first of 3 sessions. This is going to be a NYC Men Teach webinar where we're going to be talking about diversity. If you're watching this, that means that you have been selected to participate in hashtag NYC Men Equiteach, so congratulations for that. I'm super excited to be here. My name is Michael Cariff. I was a public school teacher in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I taught 9th grade English before coming to the New York City Department of Education. One of my most favorite things to do in the classroom was to talk about diversity and equity and inclusion. So I'm super excited to be here today with you guys. Just as a reminder, we're gonna talk a little bit about NYC Men Teach, our goals of NYC Men Teach, and talk about how Equiteach fits in there. So just as a reminder, NYC Men Teach, our mission is dedicated to uniting men of color committed to educating today's diverse student population, engaging in each other's professional and leadership development, and empowering the communities that we serve. And just as a reminder of our pedagogical priorities before we get started with this web series, we strongly believe in the importance of restorative justice, culturally responsive pedagogy, and mastery-based learning. You're going to hear a lot more about these throughout your time as an anchor and NYC Men Teach. My hope through this web series is that you'll see how talking about diversity, talking about equity, and talking about inclusion in the classroom are really going to help you think about ways of ensuring that your classroom uses restorative justice, culturally responsive pedagogy, and mastery-based learning. I'll also be mentioning each of these pedagogical priorities as we go throughout this webinar. So once again, welcome to hashtag NYC Men Equiteach. This web series is designed to support you guys in creating an equitable classroom so that you can make the largest impact on your students in your room. Once you watch these videos, there will be a link after the post survey where you can receive your certificate for participation and stipend. I'll talk a little bit more about logistics about the webinar itself. But I'm excited that you guys are here. Most of you guys indicated in your survey that you guys are interested in having equitable and inclusive classrooms. And I remember my first couple of years of teaching, I was, thinking to myself, yes, this is what I want. How am I going to do that? What are the things that I need? So this web series is designed for those of you with those same questions in mind. This is the first of 3 webinars. So our first webinar, we're just going to focus on common definitions and talking about some mindsets that are important to foster in your classroom. There will be 2 sessions after this. If you guys are watching this video, hopefully you found the link for this video in the Google Classroom. That's where I'm going to be posting any pre and post work. Notice that there will be post work after session 1. There was no pre-work other than filling out your survey, which you guys all did, of course. Anytime there's pre-work or post work, I will be putting it in the Google Classroom. And also I will be putting instructions for how to engage in our live chats Mondays at 1 p.m. for the next 3 weeks. I'm super excited to actually get to talk to you guys rather than just talk through this microphone. So that's going to be awesome. And that is to come. Keep in mind that you must complete that post survey in order to complete this webinar, okay? That's a very important step in this web series. And I want to keep the Danielson framework central to this conversation. A lot of what we're going to be talking about, especially in sessions 1 and 3, is going to focus on domain 2, which is the classroom environment. So creating an environment of respect and rapport, establishing a culture of learning, but understand that any development that you're doing in domain 2 is going to blend into these other domains. So once you've established an environment of respect and rapport, that's going to help a lot with communicating with students, which is in domain 3, engaging students in learning. We'll talk a little bit more about how equity in the classroom really helps you engage your students. You'll see how even we're going to be talking about designing student assessments. All of these things that really live in domain 2 bleed into the other domains, especially in domain 4A, reflecting on teaching, which is super important. All of these are super important qualities of highly effective teachers. So I kind of introduced you to the web series. If you guys have any more questions, please email us back at nycmenteach@gmail.com. But we're going to get started kind of with the content of this session. I'm super excited to share this with you guys. So one of the most exciting parts about teaching in New York City Department of Education schools is our diverse classrooms. The New York City school system has one of the largest diverse populations of students, not only in the country, but in the world. And I think their biggest reason that's cool is because students have the privilege and opportunity to learn from each other, both inside and outside the classroom. So these are just some fast facts here. You see here that at the bottom of the slide, 14.1% of students are learning English in NYC DOE schools, and 43.3% of students report speaking another language other than English at home. 70% of our kids identify as Black and Latino. And some of the most prevalent ELL home languages are Spanish, Chinese, Bengali, Arabic, and Haitian Creole. So our students come from everywhere. Our members of different groups have different identities. And what a privilege it is that we get to work with such an awesome group of youth. Diversity, though, so that we just have a common definition throughout the rest of this webinar and our chats, according to the National Education Association's Diversity Toolkit, can be defined as the sum of the ways that people are alike and different. The dimensions of diversity include race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, language, culture, religion, mental and physical ability, and immigration status. Diversity, our students represent the entire diverse population of New York City, which is really an exciting opportunity, but because all people are different, they have different needs. And this means that we have the duty and obligation to ensure that our classrooms are equitable. Just because we have diverse classrooms does not necessarily mean that they're equitable, and that's really going to be the subject throughout the rest of these webinars, is how can we make our classrooms more equitable. So what is equity? Well, equity in education is not the same thing as diversity. According to the Asia Society's Center for Global Education, it just means that personal or social circumstances such as race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, language, culture, religion, mental and physical ability, class, or immigration status are not obstacles to achieving educational potential, so they're fair, and that all individuals reach at least the basic minimum level of skills, so they're inclusive. Equitable classrooms are fair and inclusive, and what that actually looks like, we'll talk about in a second. It means that all students are getting exactly what they need in order to be successful and achieve their absolute best. So why is equity so important to have in the classroom? Equity is really important to have in the classroom for so many reasons. Equity allows students to thrive. It means that students are bringing their best selves forward each and every day so that they can learn and grow in a safe and nurturing environment. You know, as teachers, we're constantly trying to expand and affirm and empower student voice, which can also be amplified in an equitable classroom. Equity also allows us to hold students to high expectations and teaches students how to learn from each other and how to appreciate themselves and others. So equity, in other words, teaches kids the fundamental value of respect and develops their emotional intelligence. All of these things, notice, are things that we want to achieve in our classrooms anyway, and they're much easier to do when we have an equitable classroom. And so you're probably wondering to yourself, all right, I know what equity is. I get why it's important, but what does that actually look like in my classroom? And when I was a first-year teacher going to professional development, that was always my question in professional development is, okay, that's great, but what is that going to look like in my classroom? Well, these are just some examples of equity in the classroom. And keep in mind, there's so many different types of equity that are important to have in a classroom. Equity of voice, equity based on historical marginalization, equity of participation, equity of student choice. And so these are just some examples I have to address those different types of equity, okay? So the first example of just ensuring equity in your classroom is using popsicle sticks to randomize cold calls during whole group class discussions. Those are super helpful. I've also seen teachers do these Google generators where they put all their students' names in a given class period into a generator, and whatever comes up on the board, whatever student is supposed to participate does. It's a really fun culture builder. Reading predominantly authors of color or marginalized authors in a literature unit or DBQ assessment. This is super important so that students have windows and mirrors, which we'll talk about in session 3 in literature, but this doesn't just have to live in an English or social science class. Even when you're talking about science or math, bringing mathematicians and scientists of color or other marginalized scientists or mathematicians, making sure that you're ensuring that equity. I did a poetry unit in my own classroom about Black feminist poetry, and that involved mostly centering women of color and their poetry. But that also includes addressing other group memberships too. Addressing all the identities and group memberships in the room is super important. Tracking participation in class and setting standards for how many times students should participate. That really ensures equity of voice and participation, and also allows students to feel heard, which is very important in an equitable classroom. Think, pair, share groups to encourage dialogue in your classroom, especially with students who normally don't interact. Sometimes I'd put stickers on my students' desks of different colors, and students would have to go find each other, breaking up groups who normally sit together, and really allowing students to the opportunity to participate in a new way with different people. Using students' names in a math problem is a super easy way and really important way to ensure equity in the classroom. I know a math teacher who had like a name generator and would just put different names into weekly quizzes, which was super helpful. And finally, another example of equity in the classroom is just letting students choose their topic for a writing assignment, making sure that you're allowing students to use their choice and voice to articulate why they think something is very important to write about. These examples of equity in the classroom are super important examples of what an equitable classroom looks like. But equity is more than just doing any one or all of these things. Equity for students requires, and teachers and other educators, requires certain mindsets that's important to cultivate in children and the adults that work with them. And these are just two very important mindsets that are really nice and helpful to foster in your classroom. Asset-based mindsets and growth mindsets. I'm going to talk a little bit about these quickly. And if I am going too fast, or if there is something you want to ask a question about, please feel free to email us at nycmenteach@gmail.com. Make sure to put hashtag NYCMenEquiteach in your email so that we know. And so let's talk about these mindsets really quick that are important to foster in our classroom. So the first mindset I'm going to talk about briefly is asset-based mindset. This is just a mindset that focuses on the assets of communities rather than its needs, deficits, or problems. It's really easy as first-year teachers to get caught up in that deficit-based mindset. which focuses on what our classrooms need. It's thinking about the problems. It's externally focused. It's focusing on what the classroom ought to be and not what it is. And what's a lot better to focus on and what's best practice is having an asset-based mindset and instilling this in students too. Asset-based mindsets are strengths-driven. So they're thinking about what strengths can I leverage in my classroom. Asset-based mindsets are opportunity-focused. They're thinking to themselves, what opportunities do I have in my classroom? Asset-based mindsets are internally focused, so they're wondering to themselves, what can I do with my classroom as it is? Asset-based mindsets ask, or rather think in response to the question of what is present that we can build upon, okay? What can lead to new unexpected responses of community wishes? And so these are just some examples of asset-based mindset-driven classrooms. These are some qualities of them. Having student jobs in the classroom, okay, leveraging student strengths is really important when we're thinking about asset-based mindset driven classrooms, because it allows students to be their best selves and to share their strengths with their peers as well as their educators. This really instills in them a sense of accountability, and it also instills in them a sense of agency, which is really important to let students have too, over the classroom. And another example from an asset-based mindset-driven classroom is just incorporating parent engagement. The reason that this is a asset-based mindset, an example of an asset-based mindset-driven classroom, one that incorporates parent engagement, is because it really leverages the strengths of the community. What things in the community can we be utilizing in our classrooms? And parent engagement is one sure way to do that. And also just mastery-based data-driven assessment review. This sounds like a lot of words, but essentially all that means is letting students share their expertise over a project or over the curriculum. An example of this would just be, student A scores 80% on this grammar concept, and student B scores 81% on this literature analysis standard, and letting those students A and B, who are masters at different things, teach their peers who may not score as high in those data areas or those standards, to lead a review in class. It's super helpful. It allows students to kind of be the masters of the content, instilling in them instilling in them the confidence to really tackle some of like the academic content, and allows them to share their strengths and ensures that they're participating too in the development of their fellow peers. So those are just some examples of asset-based mindset-driven classrooms. Another mindset that's super important to have in your classroom and to instill in your students, as well as the adults who work with kids, is a growth mindset. This is just the belief that you can develop your talents and abilities through hard work, good strategies, and help from others, okay? It stands in opposition to a fixed mindset, which is the belief that talents and abilities are unalterable traits, ones that can never be improved. This stands in stark contrast to a fixed mindset, and let's go over some of the characteristics of a fixed mindset, because it's really easy for students to get stuck in a fixed mindset, and it's our duty and obligation as hashtag NYC Men Equiteach to make sure that they're moving more toward a growth mindset. So some characteristics of a fixed mindset is the belief that intelligence and talent are fixed, okay? Telling students, you're smart, you're not smart. These aren't things that people just are. These are being smart, for example, is the result of studying a lot. We want to focus, for example, this is just one example, we want to focus on telling kids that they can use certain strategies rather than labeling them to ensure equity in our classrooms. Believing, another characteristic of a fixed mindset is believing that effort is fruitless. So an example of this is, you know, a kid saying that they give up. We'll talk about how to address that later. Fixed mindsets lead people to believe failures define who they are. They lead people to hide their flaws, avoid challenges, ignore feedback, view feedback as personal criticism, or feel threatened by other success, okay? The kind of mindset we want to foster in our kids are growth mindsets. This allows for a more equitable classroom. And a growth mindset essentially believes intelligence and talents can be developed, okay? Effort is the path to mastery. Mistakes are just part of learning. Failures an opportunity. Failures are temporary. Growth mindset people embrace challenges, welcome feedback, and view other success as inspirational. And these are just some examples of growth mindset in the classroom. One big thing I was big on in my own classroom is the power of yet. So I had this these posters in my own classroom, and what I would do is always, when a student would say one of these statements, I would always say, you can't do this yet, but you will be able to through practice. Instead of saying something like, I also had this anchor chart in the middle in my room. Instead of telling students, I'm not good at this, you know, my students would even start reminding them, like, what am I missing? Instead of saying I'm awesome at this, I would remind students to say, you know, no, you're on the right track. And having a growth mindset is really important for mathematicians as well. As you can see in this poster here, these are just some examples of how we can incorporate these mindsets into a math classroom. So we're going to close out really quickly. Thank you guys so much for participating. I know that was a lot of information, and you can email us at any time with any questions that you guys have. Just as a reminder, this is how we're defining equity in these web series. And these are the reasons why equity is very important to have in our classrooms. The following steps are your follow-up steps. So this is what you guys are going to do after you guys watch this. You're going to write a tweet answering the question, why is it important to have an inclusive classroom? And you're going to share that tweet with us at NYC Men Equiteach. Make sure to complete the post work and join our chat on Monday at 1 p.m. Okay? Here's some resources that I want you guys to use in your as you guys are making plans in the third session for your classrooms. And thank you guys so much for participating. I'm really excited to get to know you guys further.